Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Government of and for the Future Must Use Dirigisme, Subordinating Private Interest to Public Interest. So, that word in the middle is French word dirigisme, is a concept from French politics and political science that doesn't have an equivalent in English, so that's why I'm using the French word. But it's something that it's not an action or a type of regime or type of set of government strategies that is unknown in the United States or in some other countries as well, but just happens to be that the French have a word for it, dirigisme. So dirigisme comes from the word director. Dirigiste is the French word for a film director, and dirigisme is the directing function of an entity or person or an entity. And so, and what dirigisme looked like in France was that the government would represent at times the superordinate or the interest of the public according to the political consensus of that time, and would tell private entities, private corporations to produce certain things, or would actually also create public interest corporations to serve the public interest. So that's basically dirigisme in a nutshell. It means that government can take the superordinate position over private interests. Not necessarily a full command economy. Okay, so if it's dirigisme all the time, that's a command economy, or not necessarily actually, but it gets toward that. But in any case, you could have an economy where the government decides to take control of a certain sector. In other words, take control out of the hands of private corporations for the overall overarching goals and strategy of that sector of the economy or that particular enterprise. Most often it's a sector, and they would say in this sector we need for either national independence reasons or for price stability. There's any number of different ways. The Defense Production Act is a form of dirigisme in the United States, and so but we need this concept, I think, of dirigisme overall to understand how much we have become unused to thinking of government as having that ability to take that role. And for instance, within the New Deal and also the World War II mobilization, there was a lot of dirigisme happening and from the side of the federal government. And that effort was managed almost entirely by the federal government, with corporations having input and having collaborating sometimes often to their benefit, or most of the time to their financial benefit, but they would relinquish some control over the decisions being made because they were participating in this war effort in the case of the World War II mobilization, or some other you can say peacetime goals. So in wartime, obviously, dirigisme is something that happens a lot, but it doesn't need to be confined to wartime. So we are facing a series of crises. Among other things, the pandemic, but also more generally, the climate crisis, where we need government to really structure the economy, establish a goal, and say we are going to meet this goal within X amount of time, and then let the cards fall as they may in terms of the private entities that might help the society achieve that goal. And it means maybe, writing up contracts with certain companies, creating government bureaucracies that do research, creating government bureaucracies. I'm using the word bureaucracy, which has a bad connotation, but a bureaucracy can be a good thing. And in a complex state, we need competent bureaucracies that are largely uncorrupted to execute the plans of public interest plans that the government has, and also to collect information about the society so that the government can act in a way that is responsive to the actual society rather than remotely, dictatorially, without understanding what people are wanting or what is needing to happen physically in order for some goal to be achieved, and what are the means, what are the real resources available to achieve that goal. And so there's a lot of dirigisme is planning is one element that follows from dirigisme. In other words, that there is some element of a plan that needs to happen. It's not just arbitrarily deciding, yes, you go here, you stand there because it looks better, as if the film director, so forth and so on. It's more, and that, opens it more actually to a democratic process if you create plans and have them obviously publicly discussed, and you have people take positions on the plan, and you can make a political resolution regarding some kind of plan to do something. So in any case, in the case of the climate crisis, there are so many pieces of infrastructure that are needed, and also restructuring of certain sectors of the economy that require massive intervention to change the existing system. And simply using a system of incentives and disincentives, it can be a good way to do it in certain areas, but also there are certain lacking pieces of infrastructure. For instance, connecting the electrical grid across the United States. It's a patchwork of different electrical grids. We need a super grid to go 100% renewable within short order, and also we need to create domestic production of certain vital elements of the climate transition: solar panels, wind turbines, so forth and so on. And those may be things that government is involved in creating either a new authority that contracts out to private companies to do certain tasks, or even creates a public corporation, a nonprofit public corporation that does certain vital things that the private sector is uninterested in doing, or it is within the public interest to keep the public ownership of that piece of infrastructure. For instance, the post office is one piece of our bureaucracy and public infrastructure that I'm of the opinion, and most people who think about it are of the opinion that should remain in public hands. Well, that's a political football. Basically, they're ideologues who think, oh, everything should be private, so forth and so on. But if they really thought about the tasks involved, they realize that not every town can be connected by a for-profit entity. So if you're going to have a post office in every town, you need to have the public committed, or the government committed to structuring and funding that particular agency. So dirigisme requires an attitude that says that the public interest comes first, and this is something that is very, very hard to do. While it may sound, well, of course, in certain left-wing circles, or if you're someone who, of course, yes, that's 100% what I agree to. But as you ascend the ladder in terms of power, you find that in the U.S. and in also other countries, that industry interests start to heavily influence the leaders of parties and the leaders of governments, and and what they do is they unwind some of these plans, by inserting their own interest into them. So a dirigiste attitude, and it needs to be widely accepted that this is acceptable, that this is not a taboo thing, that it's not the same thing as a totalitarian society where the government tries to plan every single aspect of life and tries to control that every aspect of life, but rather there are certain key sectors that need to be changed, and they need to be done via public investment, not only just public investment, but public control. And so that's the public control portion is where we are stepping out of the neoliberal era, out of the era of incentives and disincentives as being the only tools that government has, and into the realm of government is also a planning instance, a structuring instance for the economy and for the society overall. And that structuring should be the reason why I'm introducing this concept is that I want that restructuring to happen in the most democratic way possible. So first, the idea has to occur to people that say, yes, that can happen. It's not just taboo. It's not something you either have, quote unquote, freedom, which means allowing large corporations to structure your economy according to their interests, or you have tyranny. I'm using the language of the right wing, or even of the center right and some of the center left, even where you have a totally command economy where every consumer good is planned out by the central government and or every so forth so on. But instead we have a room which we can talk about what needs to happen in certain areas of our lives, and how we can do that in a way that is for the public good, and where we're not always dealing in private interests, and therefore the plans become second rate, or they don't achieve the goal. So one element of planning, and I just got into a Twitter conversation about this earlier today, is, for instance, the unwinding of the fossil fuel industry. In other words, the shutting down of the fossil fuel industry. That's not something that happens by magic. That requires planning, and that requires proposal, and that's not something that we have thought about in a clear enough manner because of the habits of mind of our age. And so what I'm doing with this video, I hope, is opening up the possibility. Let's talk about the types of dirigisme, how we are going to do the control of the economy democratically and for the public interest, and not just simply shuttle back and forth between the taboo of a command economy, which is something that it goes against the grain for most Americans, and the totally unchecked power of mostly large corporations, and allowing them to structure the economy according to their, and billionaires structure the economy according to their wishes. So, and in order for that discussion to start, we need to start from the space of, okay, so which sectors are we going to restructure and put under public control for either 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, or which subsectors of, and therefore, and then do the consequent politics and the consequent logistics to restructure those sectors, maybe also consulting with corporations and so forth and so on, and that have worked in those sectors in the past, but not allowing their interests and their expertise to dominate the public intention, the public will, the public interest to restructure, like housing, for instance, or the housing construction industry, or again, electricity is another area where I'm talking largely from a climate perspective, but there's also in medical service delivery, maybe we have too many private hospitals and so forth and so on, and that are creating a blockage to having a public interest oriented medical system. And so, I mean, again, that's an area where I'm for certainly Medicare for all, which doesn't really get into the public provision, direct public provision of healthcare, and it's more about simply the insurance part of it. But anyway, that's clearly that's already dirigisme in the sense of saying the private provision of insurance for basic healthcare should be eliminated. Okay, and that's what Medicare for all is about. So that is a one piece of what you could say a dirigiste approach to medical insurance. It's not to healthcare delivery. It's not to pharmaceutical production, so forth and so on. It's just that piece. But we might find that there are certain other pieces that need to be changed if we want to have an egalitarian and also a maximally free society. So freedom for people, not freedom for capital to exploit our weaknesses and our work, for its own private gain, but where we decide this is what we want. So anyway, I am putting this out there because I think this is one missing piece to public discussions, and I just want this out there, and I will probably be talking about this in future episodes. So if you have any thoughts about this concept of public control and dirigisme, please share your thoughts in the comments. And also, if you like the video, please like it. And also, if you're enjoying Politics 2100, please subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.